What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in again to another episode of Honest Diecast Customizing. Last episode, we went over how to drill, well, not how to drill, but how to tap after drilling and using screws on the base. So in the second part, in Project 934 RSR, as I like to call it, we're going to go over version B axles. So with version B axles, the traditional way of usually doing axles is like so. If you can see, these are just crimped axles. And I will link up above an old write-up on that I did as far as doing axles, which I did it this way, which is just a crimp version. And since I made that video, I wanted to come up with a cleaner alternative as far as axles go, just to kind of give it that more factory look, maybe closer to, maybe more real life. You know, this is a factory axle with that pressed end where it's flat. Just looks a lot better. Looks a lot better than just crimping it and having that part kind of stick out. Now, sometimes, in some cases, it's tough to get away from the crimped axle ends because in order to do this method that I'm about to show you, you want wheels that have recessed holes like these. As you can see, the tip of that axle kind of rests in there. So this way is going to be the best for any wheel that has a recessed hole to where that bead can sit into a little bit, because if you do just beads on non-recessed wheels, you come out with something a little like this, which I don't mind the way that this came out. I think it still looks good, but they do stick out, and they do stick out far because these wheels do not have recessed holes. So as far as this method is concerned, I would almost recommend sticking with crimping if you want a cleaner look. As you can see, they stick out quite a bit, which again, I'm okay with. I was happy with the final process, the final product of it. But going forward, I probably would have went with the crimp method on that. So just going forward, this method is for rims with recessed holes. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do version B axles using the beads. And I'm also going to show you something else, because I have already removed these wheels from this base to test fit these, and I can already tell that I am going to want to space those wheels out. So I was going to make a separate video for spacing the wheels out, but I'll go ahead and integrate this into here and show you the two methods that I use to space wheels out. And what I mean by space them, I mean space them closer out to make them more flush, or even have some more poke on the outside of the fender. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's get started. All right, so what you're going to need for this is you're going to need some close cut pliers. The finer the better. You are going to want some super glue. I tend to stick with the gel rather than the liquid. You're going to want some of these beads, these bead treasures, and there's the number right there if you need it. It does come in a variety of colors. These are just chrome ones. I had planned on getting like some red and some blue ones, but just haven't had the time to go shop for those, and I've been okay with the chrome ones for now. Obviously, you're going to want some wheels. You're going to need a car. You're going to have the car open. As you can see, we got our 934 RSR all torn apart, ready to go. And lastly, you will need some axle rods. So this is axle rod that I have recommended before. This is brass rod. It's .032 brass rod. It is soft and it does bend easy, but once the wheels are on and the axle is in the car, it's actually quite sturdy. But I prefer you to use this over music wire or anything like that, because music wire is just dangerous. It just impales the crap out of you. So I have two sets of wheels here that I want to play with on this, because I think either one of these are going to look the best. They don't match the green on the car perfectly, either one of them. If I had to pick one, I would say these monoblock wheels probably match a little bit better. But one thing that concerns me is, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but that recess hole is not very deep on there. So I don't know how the beaded axles will look in there. And then these wheels, these are from the RTR Mustang in Slide Street, which I don't think, it's quite a bit lighter, but still, I don't think they're going to look horrible. So the plan today is to make axles for both of these wheels, test fit them, see how they fit, and how they look, how they match with the car. So let's get started. So as you can see, I've already taken the fronts out, and all I did to take the front out was just snip that little tab right there. So the plastic bases are usually pretty easy. See, just falls right out. For metal, you will need some way to cut those metal prongs that would be on a metal base, and good steel close cutters like this usually work, but sometimes you'll have to use a combination of things, maybe a small die grinder. I've used small cutoff wheels to cut those. I have used screwdrivers to pry them. I've used every trick. But these pliers seem to work pretty good. All right, so the first part of the process is we'll go ahead and take out one of these rods, and we'll just cut some length. We'll be generous with it. We'll cut 2 sections. There we go. That should be long enough, definitely long enough. If you're working on something like a Porsche that has a thinner wheel stance in the front than the rear, you are going to need to make longer axles for the back, so keep that in mind. Always cut generous, and then that way you don't have to start over. So we're going to take one of our axle sections here, and the cut is not that great, so I'm going to cut it again. Try to get it nice and flush, like so. And then next, we are going to crack open the beads, and we're going to pull some beads out. I forgot to mention, some very fine needle nose pliers will probably come in very handy for these because they are very small. So I've got 7 there. And since I am going to teach you one of my methods for spacing wheels, I'm going to pull 8 of those out instead of 4. All right, next you want to, you can probably, in all honesty, I could use this mat for this, but I prefer to have it a little bit elevated. You're going to want a flat surface, and you're going to want to take a bead and set it like so that its opening is facing upwards. And then we're going to take a little dab of glue, very, very tiny. Just a little dab will do you. And we're going to take the axle, and this part can be a little bit tricky. We're going to put it into the axle, and we're going to push down. And that is going to give us that flush look. That's why you want the flat surface to push down on. So there's that. And we're going to take a Q-tip, and we're just going to do a little insurance to wipe off any excess super glue that might have gotten on the axle side, because we definitely don't want that interfering with our wheels rolling. We want nice free rolling wheels. So we're going to clean all that excess super glue off. Not much to it. Okay, so here's where we test how the beaded axle will look on this wheel. We'll see how much it sticks out. Hopefully it doesn't stick out too much. And that's not terrible. That gives it that center cap look. So it's not too bad. Let's check the Mattel wheels, the RTRs. I already know how these look, but I want to show you the difference. This is why recessed holes are pretty important for this. Just look at that. That's super clean. So if you don't want a big center cap look, Probably the beaded axle will probably not be a good option for you. This, I don't think it looks too bad. It's probably very hard to tell on camera, but it's not terrible. So let's roll with it. All right, so we'll grab our base and we'll take the axle and just kind of feed it through there. And I like my axles to fit pretty tight. It's definitely a fine line when working with axles between being too tight and being too loose. So there's our test fit, and I'm going to take the interior portion here and I'm going to put the interior on. I'm going to try not to spill the axle. I'm going to try to keep it in there. Right now what we're doing is we're test fitting to see how these wheels are going to be, how aggressive they are going to be poking out, and if we need to space them. So here's the wheel. Looks pretty good from the side, but when you turn it to the front, it's kind of sunken in a little bit, and I don't like that. I kind of want it to sit more out, like maybe that. I want to give it just a little tiny bit of poke. And if you look in here on the base, you see these little notches that are stuck out, and almost every base has this. So by my calculation, if I shave this standoff down, and if I take this wheel, I'm going to take another bead, and I'm going to put a bead. Oh, that one flew away. So this is one method I use to space my wheel. I'll put a bead on the inside as well. So let's take our base again and see how this looks. I'm going to put the interior portion on top of the axle just to hold it in place. And we will take our body again. And put our body down. So there's that. That's almost perfect. Honestly, I was thinking I was going to shave those down. Not anymore. That's perfect. Just a ever so slight poke. That looks really good. I'm really happy with that. So we have our bead on the outside. We have our bead on the inside. We're going to take another bead. And we're just going to slide that on for now. So there's two beads. Now, let me grab my other bead here before I lose that. Now we're going to slide this bead out on the axle rod a little bit. Sorry, my hands are in the way. I know. So there's one bead on each side. There's one between the wheel. There's one on. There's three total beads on here. One on the outside. One spacing this wheel out, and this is going to space the other wheel out. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, and you have to use good judgment and good eyesight. If you're like me and you like tight axles, you don't like the wheels shifting back and forth when this thing is all together. I like tight axles. So I'm going to look at how far that bead sticks out, and I'm going to gauge it on this side, and I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to cut. So all you need to do is just pull a little tight, just make sure everything's squared together. You don't have to pull it massively tight. You definitely want to leave some kind of fractional margin to make sure that those wheels stay spinning. And then you cut. And just by gauging it, it looks pretty close, but I'm going to cut like another couple millimeters off. So I'll take the wheel off and then I'll gauge. Now don't get frustrated, because you probably will mess up and cut too much your first couple of times, but you'll get a good feel, a good idea of where you need to cut and how much you need to cut once you work with these beads a little bit. So I probably still need to pull that axle through a little bit more. So I'm going to cut like another millimeter off. That looks pretty good to me. So now I'm going to take the axle back out. I'm going to leave everything together. So we have our bead on the outside. We have our wheel and tire. We have two more beads in here. These are our spacers from the body. And we're going to use the same principle by taking the bead and placing it on a flat surface. Just a dab of glue, not too much. And in it goes. Q-tip clean again. And give it some insurance blows to make sure it's dry. And moment of truth, we're going to test and see how this looks. Now this is the front axle, so it needs to go on the front. That's perfect. It's moving around a little bit. Very, very slightly. Again, I like tight axles. You might not be so anal about axles, but I am. I do not like wobbly axles. So let's do a quick test fit real quick. And there we go. We have our fronts on. And just about a perfect stance. You can't ask for a better stance than that. Probably not even a millimeter sticking out. Now if you do want to get crazy with it, this is a Jägermeister 934.5 I did, and I did want this one to poke quite a bit. So as you can see, I used the beads, and the standoffs are on here as well. That's some poke right there. So you just got to decide which look you like best. You know, if you don't want any poke, if you want it to be sunken in, you know, you don't even have to consider really spacing these out. But this will work for a lot of different things. Drag wheels, regular wheels, whatever. Let's cook up our rear axle real quick and see how this thing looks with these wheels. Well, there's our final fit with the monoblock style wheels, and I gotta say, man, that looks really, really good. Looking for that flush look. Just wheels almost, if not barely, just tiny bit out farther than the fender. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And there's what the underside looks like, if you can see. So you have your beads holding on the outside, definitely clean. Then you got the beads standing off on the ends. Kind of makes it look more like an axle anyway, which is nice. And you can see perfect roller still. Very nice. I do like these. So far I am favoring these wheels by far. Absolutely. So we have our Project 934 RSR all back apart. Here's the wheels and the axles right there. Now we're going to do it all over again and test fit these and see how these look. And you guys tell me which one you guys like better. Let's do it. Well guys, and there we have it. There's our other set of wheels. They actually look pretty darn good, and now that they're on the vehicle, they match the green pretty well. So it's gonna be a hard decision, but I like the look of the monoblocks better on this particular casting and kind of what we're shooting for on this one. But man, this looks good too. I have to say that those wheels do match the green a little better. But I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. You guys tell me which one. This or the first version. Tough call, but it's up to you guys. I'm gonna leave that up to you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed as far as the spacing goes, spacing the wheels, doing version B axles. Hopefully you find it helpful. You know, maybe give it a try. This is the way that I prefer to do them. Works best for me. And real quick before we say goodbye, this is the other way that I used to space out wheels. I don't really do it anymore. I have kind of gone towards the bead spacing, but all you got to do is just cut some styrene, cut it to fit into here, and then once the glue dries, just cut out your little notches right here where your axles come through. Now keep in mind, you are going to have to shave off that standoff right there that we were working with and that bead is sitting against on the body. You're going to have to shave that off and give it a smooth surface to glue to. But this is the other way that I used to space wheels out. But as mentioned, not really anymore. I like the bead look. Kind of gives it a little more of a realistic look, like it's actually axles. Regardless of which way you decide to go, either way works. So I hope you found this tutorial useful as well. Our version B axles, as well as wheel spacing, all in one. How about that? We are still not done with our Project 934 RSR. Next video, we will be going over doing some simple detailing. I'll show you some simple detail tricks to make this thing really pop and come to life. And you can apply it to whatever diecast custom that you're working on. So again, thanks for tuning in. Please leave a thumbs up if you found this tutorial useful. It only helps motivate me to keep going with tutorials, whether it be intricate or basic. So as long as I know I'm helping people, I'll keep posting them up. And don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know which wheels that you prefer to see on this final product. So thanks again for tuning in. Stay tuned for much more content, hunting, customizing, and all. We'll see you next time.